clarify, you know what I mean?
I think that's all there is at this point with this ChatGPT thing is like questions. I'm not sure anyone has the any answers. You're probably the person that has the most answers. So all right, so we're just going to get started here. It's 5 after. We've got a bunch of people jumping in. I think we had almost 100 people register for this event. So I want to first thank Dr. Nagrath Aditya, my old friend, for coming in and sharing with us. If there's one person who knows how this whole AI thing is going to change the world of marketing, it's Aditya here. He is a computer genius, math doctorate in math, and the founder of Elephant Software, as well as just a brilliant individual. So I'm stoked you're here. You want to tell us a little bit about your background and what you got going on with this whole AI thing? Because I know you've been playing around with it for years. So
yeah, I started playing with AI back in 1996 or 1997, and I kind of set it down, and basically, like, to give you a little bit of history around it, back in the 80s and 90s, what people considered to be intelligence was learning, right? So like, can something learn? And that then they tried to classify as intelligence. So what they did was they kind of looked at the human brain as a model, or just brains in general as a model of how can we start to do that? And what they came up with was basically something at very high level looks like this. So very high level, you have inputs that go into a function, and then there are certain outputs that you're expecting. Mm-hmm. And what you do is you feed that to a training function, and the training function basically alters F so that the inputs start to go to the outputs. And it basically cycles it over and over and over again, looking at the error of the outputs, trying to minimize it, so to speak. Mm-hmm. That's why when you kind of play with these AI things, they're not 100% accurate. Sometimes you give it some input and then the output just doesn't seem right. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, high level, that's what's going on. Now, when I was working with this stuff, it was nowhere near as advanced as today. And the reason why is because we didn't have computing power. Basically, to keep cycling this stuff, and also, like, generally was speaking, they want to go to higher dimension, meaning like the way to imagine F is sort of like a matrixy equation. So if you took linear algebra, the input's considered to be a big vector, a high dimensional vector, and then you got a bunch of matrixy operations kind of happening inside of F, trying to get you to O. And so like, we didn't have the computing power, but at the same time, what AI had going for it is that, like, the GPUs that power video games are also doing very similar types of matrixy operations. And so like in the 2000s, a lot of work was done into getting the training ability to happen on video graphics cards. And then, came along Bitcoin. And Bitcoin, similar story. Like, if you had very heavy GPUs, you could mine Bitcoin or Ethereum or whichever variant you wanted. So in the last 2 or 3 years, there's actually been like an exponential acceleration in the speeds of the graphics cards and the types of graphic cards that are now out there.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So that then brings, so like, I think I was looking at some stuff, and I'm looking at like 100 times faster than just 2 years ago. Anyway, bring it now to ChatGPT. So ChatGPT, I have actually like the OpenAI doc on what it is. That'd be good. Let me see if I can share my screen.
You know how to do that, right? The button at the bottom.
Yeah, there's a weird error. Like it shows like a little warning sign for every single one of the windows instead of showing it to me. So I think that
you're the computer scientist. You
if my emails and messages are on the play, like, oh, here we go. Oh my gosh. You know what? This is a new laptop, and apparently Zoom did not have the screen sharing capabilities.
Oh. Well, so the in that formula you showed, the F, right, is the function. And that's, the whole world is kind of ablaze with this potential for the ChatGPT. And it's not just the OpenAI, right? There's other versions coming out. Google had their big flub yesterday where it didn't work. And there's other variants coming out like Jasper and it's the start of things. And so everyone is in my marketing world, everyone is really like, how do we use this as a tool for marketing? And so what I was hoping to hear from you as well is, the details on how this thing extrapolates and what really I don't understand is the how it can understand a language model, right? So when you put in a prompt, how is it interpreting that and turning that into a function? And I assume you'll probably get there, but
I think that was the thing I was going to talk about here. So if I were to show you this spec over here, what it is a text completion engine. So like what's happening then is that like there are different people out there trying to train different inputs and outputs. And I'm glad that you kind of asked this question this way, because like, for example, what you could be doing is you could be doing text to speech using artificial intelligence, which Google has a thing out there. I think Amazon has a thing out there. And so like what they're doing is as input, they're taking text, and as output, they're doing this mathematical model of what it would be. And they actually train two networks. They train one network to get you to that mathematical model, and then a second network that gets you to a wave file. And like they run it through and boom, it plays, or it drops a wave file. And for this particular model, what they appear to have done is text completion. So you feed it in text, and the output would be the text that kind of completes the text that you're starting. So like the way to think about it would be like the improv exercise, right? Where I start a story, then you continue it, and then I pick it up where you left off, and then, right, we just keep handing it back and forth. And that's kind of what it was. And then what they did was they, again, increased the dimension. So like it all kind of depends on how much input it could process at a time. And the more that you can put in and get out of it, then kind of makes F feel more intelligent. But when you start interacting with it, you start to realize that it's just a function. That's all it is.
And
so,
yeah, no, go, you finish. Because what I'm trying to get at is, I think most people are looking at this thing as like truly artificial intelligence, in that it's creating something for you that is new and unique. But it, in my opinion of it, and I'm totally open to being corrected here, you are, even though it's an enormous data set that it's pulling from, I think the word is nodes, right? even though it's an enormous data set, it is really a still limited data set, right? So is it truly generating new content, or is it kind of piecing together pre-existing content? I don't understand how that works. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense to me. I'm just trying to pull up the link for this Zoom session, because like, I think if you could see some of this stuff in operation, and I think that's what people are going to want to see. So let me just click the quit and reopen here. And then if it doesn't bring me straight back, I'll click the link and come back.
Okay. Just me. If you have questions when he comes back in, go ahead and just post them in the chat, and we will try to address those.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Hopefully he comes back, because I don't know. I have a lot of ideas on how we can use this stuff, but I want to have it based in facts rather than opinions.
Hi, am I back?
Let's see what's.
Can you hear me yet? I can see you.
Welcome back.
Okay, there we go.
We missed you.
I could see you for a minute, but I couldn't.
Yeah, Zoom is leaving a lot to be desired these days.
All right, so let me see here. Where's Slack? There we go. Let me just close this down here. Okay, good. So this is running in my Slack here, and let me move my Slack to this other screen so it doesn't look strange. Okay, so like now the question is how do you use ChatGPT in your business? And like this is going to differ from business to business, but there's a lot of like really interesting things that have happened from like this completion engine, so what they trained. And like the first question I think that like you're having and the audience is having is like, you know, can you tell us more about like what's happening when you ask it to generate content? So why don't we just take a look? Because at the end of the day, like what it boils down to is like these functions trying to replicate similar input to kind of similar output. So like, tell me a story about a duck. Let's hope.
And so this is the ChatGPT engine that you've integrated here, right?
Yeah, I've integrated ChatGPT into a bot in my Slack so that I can play with it.
Okay. So do you get similar usage errors as you know, most people log in these days get just the busy signal, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can see that it took a little bit of time, but here's the story about a duck. So once upon a time, there was a duck named Quack. Quack was a very adventurous duck who loved to explore the world around him. One day, Quack decided to go on a journey to find out what was beyond the pond he lived in. So like, I don't know, like when you look at this, it's a story. I mean, could work for a children's story probably. I think people have published books kind of like with the children's story that looks like this. But like in your business, you're never going to say, tell me a story about a duck. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I
think the widest application we're seeing now is using this for creating social posts and creating blog content, right? Like it's a content machine at this point.
That's right. So like you can use this to generate content, but then like this is now where like you start to realize that there's a difference between actual intelligence and what they're calling artificial intelligence, at least as it exists right now, right? Like maybe if you get to a high enough dimension, and that's what this, like the numbers behind the GPT, the 3, the 3.5, the 4, like they're just increasing the number of dimensions that it goes through. But first of all, like this thing has no state. So like if I asked it now, like, could you change this story so that Quack lived by the ocean? It doesn't even remember what it just told me. You know what I mean? And so like, this is like what I'm saying is like, so I just gave it a new input and now it just gave me a new quote unquote completion, right? So it's like, could you tell, right? So the next thing that would happen is like you said, right? Like, could you make a Facebook post? So like, why don't I just use Elephant Learning because that's what we do here. So like, could you create a Facebook post for Elephant Learning? And what you'll even notice is like, sometimes if you don't write a period, it'll put the period in for you because it's expecting the period. It didn't do it this time. So let's learn together. Elephant Learning is an innovative math program that helps kids learn math in a fun and engaging way. So like it somehow knows that we're math. With their adaptive learning technology, kids can learn at their own pace and get the help they need to succeed. Join us today and start learning math with Elephant Learning. And then it's got some hashtags. And so like, it also got the adaptive technology correct. And so like, okay, fine. It's a very short post. I've put this thing in before and it's made up stuff about our tutors, which we don't have tutors. We have mathematics coaches, but we don't have tutors, right? So like, the thing is that when you start looking at it, you're going to want to probably correct it. But then the question is like, could I tell it more? So like, could you create a Facebook post about a girl named Maya? So like we had a girl named Maya and we did a case study on her and she started at 6 years old. So she started at 6 years old within, so I got to tell it about Elephant Learning. So could you create a Facebook post for Elephant Learning about a girl named Maya? She started at 6 years old within Elephant Learning. And she learned 4 years of math over the course of 1 year. She is now doing fractions, decimals, and percentages. Her parents told us that she is now learning how to sew so that she can create her own clothing line. And the reason why that's interesting is because like if she's doing fractions, decimals, and percentages, then she can understand the measurements and etc.
Right.
And so here's what it spits out.
So now explain what happens from the engine side. So the software went out and basically searched kind of the web, right, for anything about Elephant Learning and Maya, and is pulling in that data and then configuring or writing this output based on that set, right?
I don't believe that's what's happening. I believe that it's feeding this content into that function and then this is what's coming out. Now, somewhere in there, they might be doing some sort of web stuff, right? Because they were able to determine that Elephant Learning was math and they were able to determine that we care about the adaptive learning. And I think this is why, like, when you look at like Microsoft bought this, they're integrating it into Bing, or they're like, I mean, integrating into Word kind of makes sense, right? Because like, going to generate some intros or whatever. It's quite nice, you know what I mean? But like, it makes mistakes. Same as like the Google Bard, right? Like you're seeing what happens to Google stock right now. But like the challenge is that like, who's the arbiter of truth for what's coming out? And like, the question then is like, how usable is it? You know what I mean? So
That's exactly
the
it.
interesting thing though, Yeah. The interesting thing though is that as I keep feeding it, right, like as I keep going back into it and changing like the prompt, so like she's now creating her own clothing line, right? And let's change it from a Facebook post to, could you create 3 paragraphs as a Facebook post? Because like, for example, like this would be like one of our case studies. And so like on the case study, I'd like to tell a little bit of the story. So like if I ask it to kind of generate more content, I think you'll start to see the flaws.
Well, so that's a good point, right? Like, so if you're a business owner and you're using this to generate content for your socials and for your blog post, what is, from your perspective as the computer scientist, what is kind of the warnings that you kind of want to be aware of? Like I have some opinions I want to talk about this, but
So like what I mean, obviously, just like with any content that you're going to put out there, either as the business owner or the manager of the content, you're going to want to read it over and make sure that it's accurate and make sure that like everything is the way you want it to be. I mean, typically speaking, and I've used this maybe 2 or 3 times to create posts, right? Like typically where it's going to be low impact, somewhere in the middle of funnel. Again, something like this, where it's like, hey, could you generate a small story about this student from maybe the blog post or whatever, right? Like get some details out of it and give it some bullet points. But like the real thing then is that like I paste it into the post, and then I start kind of rejiggling it so that it looks like how I want. And like it's almost the same thing like when you use like a third-party writing service, right? Like they're not super familiar with your product, and so like if you don't give them the details, then they're not able to write about it per se.
Right.
And so like it's kind of interesting that I could feed it to this bot and then get something semi-usable back, because I'm sort of already used to like, let me go through it, let me make sure what was written still matches everything that we're doing, and etc. And it's close, right? So like from the perspective of like, how do you use this becomes kind of like a calculator for copywriting, right? Like I can give it some materials, it can give me some materials back. And then like the thing that's kind of interesting about it from the content perspective is like how much can it generate? You know what I mean? Like how much can I jiggle with it and play with it and sort of get something that's more usable to me? You know what I mean? And like, how can other people use it to do that as well?
So if you look at it like it is just like an outsourced writer who has limited knowledge of your business or brand, it's the leverage you're picking up is really just sparking new ideas, maybe getting saving the gist of a post. But
so like when IBM's Big Blue started playing chess, and beating Kasparov, what they thought was very interesting was that the computer would choose openings that no human being would ever choose, because like early on in the history of mathematics, in the history of chess, people were like, yeah, that's a bad opening, right? People tend to lose if they open that way, but Big Blue would open that way and then win, right? So like what's interesting is that like it might generate some ideas for you, right? So like if you're like a copywriter and now you're using this thing as a calculator, it could be helping you to generate ideas and move in different directions that you may not have chosen just by yourself, because you're trying to avoid it.
It's an idea generator.
In a way. And then like, I mean, again, it's limited by the fact that it was trained by human beings like right now, right? So like 10 years from now, is the stuff that it's going to be generating still relevant? I don't know. And probably it will be. I mean, I'm sure Microsoft will come up with a solution for that problem as like that happens. But like the other half of this story here, and like the reason why there's so much hype around it. And I mean, like you could see it just never came back. I don't know what the issue is. If I should kind of restart this thing and see if I send it again, will it work? Stuff.
So, you know, I've been around marketing for 30 years, right? And I remember back in the day when the SEO game, and there's some chat in the live stream here with some questions around this, but this is my concern is, you know, back in the day, we used to, for example, I ran a tea company and we ranked for, it was a weight loss diet tea. And so we ranked on all sorts of keywords for that particular company. And we were getting, you know, it was easy. We were getting 3,000 unique visitors per day on the website. Well, business is pretty easy when that happens. But what happened then, I think it was like 11 or 12 when they pushed out Penguin, and all of a sudden it became a game of, instead of quantity, it became a game of quality. Because Google's motivation, right, is to show and serve up the best SERPs they possibly can. If they can't perform that function, they're not doing their job technically. So, and then in the last couple of years, we had the whole duplication thing, right, where you had the canonical references and you had to have everything set up precisely. And my concern with this is now you've got millions of marketers out there who are kicking out volumes of content generated by this AI, and basically just kind of flooding the web with, I don't want to say pointless content, but just more content than Google knows what to do with, right? And it's only going to get worse. If I can sit down and kick out 20 blog posts in 30 minutes, right? What's to stop me from putting out 1,000 blog posts, right? So I think there's going to come a time when, much like Penguin and you know, what's happened is these search engines are going to depreciate anything that's generated by this technology. And I'm almost, I mean, it's all conjecture. There's no facts behind it, but it just makes sense to me that to some degree, you're going to, all the advantages that you're getting here in terms of increased rate of production are going to be depreciated eventually rather soon, probably. Does that jive with kind of your thinking around it?
I mean, I don't see, honestly, how that's different than from today anyway. You know what I mean? Like, the challenge is that, like, it's really hard to come up with meaningful content. Mm-hmm. You see what I mean? And so, like, it always is, like, that's the thing that the machine doesn't have. The machine doesn't have the meaning behind all of this stuff. So, like, and this is kind of like why I wanted this to come back to what I was saying earlier, right? So, like, the reason why there's so much hype around this is because of this other thing here. Can you show me how to do an HTTP post in Axios? And it basically dropped the JavaScript code there for me. I can also tell it to generate like different things. And I've used this, for example, to help train some text-to-speech stuff on a computer back there. So, like, for example, I've never really coded in Python, but I said, hey, I need some Python code to do this. And I gave it to ChatGPT, and it gave me back some semi-usable code, which I then modified to get the result that I needed. Mm-hmm. And so, like, I mean, the real challenge is that, like, this thing that you're saying, that's happening anyway. The reason why Google switched from, like, the amount of content to, like, is the content meaningful? Is it really what we want? Is because ultimately, yeah, that's what the end user is after, right? So, like,
Right.
The marketer is trying to come in and they're trying to like find a way to hack something. And then like the question is are they truly adding meaning to it? And so like in the long run, this might actually end up being better for people and for marketers and for content generators who like are able to actually kind of go in and then make that difference, right? By adding that meaning to the content and making that meaning for the human beings, right? Because like, this is the thing is that like, when you look at this here, it's like, we're so proud of Maya. This will totally work right now. But you're right. Over time, people are going to look at this and they're going to say, you know what? You just got ChatGPT writing your ads and why should I read them? Right? Like, I don't know why I should.
Yeah, you're going to get that ad blindness.
But that, again, like that's something that happens right now anyway. So like,
yeah.
Then what ends up happening is people have to sit down and they have to write something more meaningful than what ChatGPT can come up with. And so there's always going to be maybe like a race, but then the thing is that like, you got to use somehow the tool to kind of outwit the tool. So like, I think basically this took everyone by surprise, first of all. I mean, like a completion function, no one thought this was going to like be able to spit out code like this and have it be accurate. I use Axios. I was just using Axios. This is exactly how you use it. So like, I mean, this is kind of a nice thing because like, as long as they return the request in a reasonable amount of time, I don't have to go to Google. I don't have to find the right web page, which would typically be, you know, like whoever's hosting the Axios manuals. I don't have to search the manual for the function. It's right there. It's like, you know, like outside of the marketing function of the business, this is probably going to revolutionize every piece of the business.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've given it queries like, hey, if I gave you like data, would you be able to run linear regression on it? Meaning like, could you analyze the data like a data analyst and tell me what would be optimized spend? And it claimed it could do it. I haven't yet to try, but like, this is kind of the thing is like, this is kind of surprising given like what it was. Now, the real danger again is, and like you saw it with Google, they're still down. They're down another $5 today. How accurate is the information? And like, that's why like people are like worried about the quote unquote responsibility of this, because like, if you give this to someone else that maybe doesn't know that, how to use Axios Post, and they're just trusting this thing. And I mean, it's the same thing as searching the internet, but I wiped out a file over there when I wasn't paying attention. I got too used to just, how do you do this? And it gave me a good answer. So I copy paste it, boom, wiped out the file. Like, oh, well, guess what? I've done that from the internet too. Now I got to pay attention, right? So now when I'm reading what it gives me back, I'm paying attention. So like, as human beings, then like, we still got to be able to create human beings that like are able to determine what's real, what's not real, and etc. But yeah, like, I hope this answers the question you asked.
So that leads us into now, what are the future uses that aren't being thought of today? Everyone's doing content production, but what I'm interested in is ideas like, so when we're working with a company and developing like we did with you, right? We look at customer interactions, whether they're sales calls or product reviews or whatever, right? And so we have this data set that we can feed into this. And then, like you said, I'm always a big fan of like the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. So if I have 100 recorded sales calls, my thinking would be, hey, let's put the transcripts or even the actual recordings into this engine and then say, hey, look, go get me the 80-20. What's the 20% of the problems discussed on these sales calls that 80% have, and then kick that back to me?
I'm not sure ChatGPT can do that, but OpenAI had another, like, and I was looking at exactly because like what you're saying is something I'm also interested in. and they discontinued that API for something else. And then I kind of stopped following it because I was like, this is going too far down a different rabbit hole. But yeah, I mean, I believe these functions are out there. It just wouldn't be through this particular technology.
So yeah, but it's coming, right? Like whether it's Chat, OpenAI, or Google or someone's going to come up with this, right? And so
it's already there.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think, like, from a business standpoint, if you're connecting this tool to your sales process, and as a marketer, I can now extract the real, meat of the problems we solve as a business for the customer. And in my mind, it's almost like a Venn diagram. So I have that function. And then if I come in and say, all right, like we go to some of the classic copywriters out there, like Eugene Schwartz, right? And if we can take then and build almost like another data set of every sales letter these, legendary copywriters created, and then we put those two together, and in the middle, we can say, hey, go write me a new sales letter based on this problem set in the style of Eugene. And hopefully you should be able to get a pretty good result out of that, right?
Well, so like, I think ChatGPT is sort of already doing that. Cause like, I think I saw some people on television saying, hey, could you give me a monologue like Bill Maher's? And they did it on Bill Maher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So like, and they said it looked like what you're saying here, like beginning of your thing. So like, I think like what you're saying is possible. And like, it's an interesting thing. And what you're doing is you're hooking together some slightly different functions, but like, it can be built. I mean, that's the interesting thing with like the AI stuff, is that like, again, it boils down to the input, the function, and the output. And like, there's a lot of knobs. That's why it's like,
yeah,
it's a very mathematical subject, obviously, but like, it's a great job because you'll just sit there for 60 hours at a time waiting for your experiment to finish to see if it was any good. But like, at the end of the day, I mean,
yeah. So, I mean, I think, because what I'm trying to think about is not so much what it's going to do for us today, but how it's going to change the whole industry of marketing and business itself in 2-3 years down the road. And so another kind of example I think of is back in 2000, right after the .com crash, I started a translation agency. And the translators, we would take, and we were always selling. Translation was always an expense, right? People paid per word to get their content translated. And so there was a tool out there called Trados, which was basically a translation tool that the translators, it would break the content up into small segments. And then as they translate it, it all goes into a database. And the bigger your database, the more matches you would have.
Yeah. So like right there, like ChatGPT is already doing that.
Yeah. But so here's the thing, right? Is what we would sell in the translation agency was, how do you turn your translation expense into an asset? Because the bigger their database, it improved the consistency of the translations, because it's real human translation, but it's stored in a database. And I'm almost thinking, like, from a business perspective, businesses almost have to create this function where they're going to start creating these quote unquote bots or translation databases, but it's going to be marketing databases. And it's like, that's going to be a whole, I kind of think in the future, that's going to be a whole career path, right? You're going to have engineers and computer people who put all this and build these kind of assets for companies.
I mean, it depends on if people want to be training their own stuff, you know what I mean? So like, for example, I like this, they have this database of the translations, right? So they could theoretically build this translation bot based on their translators over the years, through this technology or something similar.
Yeah.
And then that would be their own specialized function, right? Because they're not handing out those input outputs. But like, ultimately speaking, like the amount of data that's being generated around all of these things in almost near real time. I mean, like it's already full-time jobs for people to go gather this data, make it relevant, and then, right, like, can we get it into a format that we can train, for example? And so like, there's just so much as possible. I haven't even shown the stuff here where like you could generate images. Like when I come in, you had seen some broken image links, but I can tell it, create an image of a mom and a daughter at a computer, and like it'll do it. And now I just have to drop that in Photoshop, slap my logo on it, and put it out there.
That's incredible to me, the image generation stuff, where you have an idea for the image in your head, say for a Facebook ad or something, and rather than buying a stock photo or scouring the web for hours trying to find the right picture, you can just describe the damn thing and it generates it. And it's rough now, but a year or two from now, it's going to be indistinguishable.
Well, I mean, whether it is or not, right? Like the problem is always going to be that, like, the adage that a picture is worth 1,000 words. So unless you want to give 1,000 words to ChatGPT, right? You're not going to get the image back. The thing is that, again, it's going to get you close. And so like, it's useful, I'd say, from a leadership perspective, right? Like if I got a graphics designer and I could jiggle ChatGPT to get me close, now I could point at things and say, like, this is what I'd like to see, right? And now we could make a vision occur in a team a little bit easier, right? I have zero drawing capabilities. So like I have a hard time telling anyone, like, this is what I'd like to see. I have to just end up go and do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And in that respect, it's
like
brilliant.
Yeah. So like, I mean, this is what I'm saying is that, like, there's a lot of fear out there. Is like, could this replace people? And like, the answer is yes, right? Like, all technology is going to maybe remove people from the equation. But at the same time, we're living in an environment where we basically hit the edge of human productivity. There's more jobs available still than human beings, and they're trying to change that. But like, the theory is that, like, if you release human beings to do more of this work, we can then have more companies having the copywriters that are maybe even using ChatGPT to help generate the content, right? So that you don't need as many copywriters creating content because you have these tools. At the end of the day, like, like it always feels like people are like, well, this thing can go from start to finish completely. And that's what they're either trying to build or afraid of building, or like afraid is being built. But at the end of the day, something that gets you 75% of the way there is an amazing tool.
Yeah.
Okay? That's an amazing tool that I can integrate into my tool set, just like I've done from the coding perspective. I could have been completely afraid that, like, oh, ChatGPT is going to replace me because, like, it can generate code. But instead, I just picked it up and said, you know what? I need a script that does this. Can you help me do that? Because otherwise it's going to take me 15 minutes. And it took 5 seconds for it to generate it. And it took me another 2 minutes to fix it. And so, like, to me, guess what? I got more stuff done that day. I feel more productive, etc. Right? So to me, it's a very useful tool. Anything that gives me back time, I mean, that's great.
That's the one commodity we have a limited amount of, right? So I just always get a little wary when there's kind of an easy button, and this has a little bit of an easy button feel to it,
Oh yeah. And there's a lot of people out there hitting that easy button. I know someone who told me that they were going to build an affiliate website based on blog posts completely generated by ChatGPT. And I mean, like, if you want to, like, ask for my quote unquote criticism or judgment, or like why would this not work?
Yeah.
I said, well, first of all, how many other people are going to do that? Okay.
Precisely.
Second of all, why is anyone reading these blog posts? Like, I mean, someone still has to come up with subject matter and like, right? There's no intent in ChatGPT. I still got to tell it things to generate the blog post. You know what I mean? And then 3, what value are you adding to the customer at that point, right? To the person who's reading it, what value are you adding? And that's at the end of the day, the whole thing, right? Like there's going to be a lot of people that are going to use the technology and not add value to human beings' lives. And like, if we focus on that, then we lose the benefit of the tool.
Right. And that's what I'm seeing is you have a bunch of easy button marketers creating mountains of content that has little to no value. And again, it's, you know, I come from the old school of marketing where we're kind of direct marketing where, you know, for a company to produce content for content's sake is a bit, you know, just chasing your tail. It doesn't really do much for the customer. And it should always have an objective with a measurable result, right? And so that's, I think right now, like that's how we started this conversation, right? Is just what are the smart questions we should be asking of this technology that's going to help us move forward? What are your thoughts on how you're using it in your business?
Yeah, I mean, I've integrated into several places, and like, I mean, I find that like I'm using it like personally, but then like I see myself falling back to Google. Like I'm pretty sure this thing's not going to give me information, so I'm going to go somewhere else. But like, yeah, there's definitely like if I got to generate a story, if I got to generate some code, and like I don't 100% know like which direction to start heading in, this thing's starting me off. It's getting me 50, 60, 75% of the way to goal. And so like, in my opinion, right, like that makes it so that I can produce more in a day. Where is it going? I mean, I assume that like maybe it will quote unquote get better theoretically. I mean, whatever quote unquote better means. The challenge is that like my understanding of what like they did was they kind of tried to use things that were more verbose to make ChatGPT. So like they got more verbose things. So that just means then that like it's used to generating kind of more, you know what I mean? And like, again, right? Like the idea is that like if you keep generating more and it's just kind of story and it's just fluff and then, like maybe it's interesting, maybe it's not, there's no real meaning, there's no real value underneath it. And I think that like I don't know, for example, that ends up working. You know what I mean? Like if they make it more verbose than it is, does it get better? I don't think so. You know what I mean? Like I don't see that necessarily as better. But they'll find a way to make it better. I mean, that's like they kicked off a new arms race is what this has done, right? So now anyone with an idea is going to go try to train a function or use off the shelf functions to kind of build like maybe something like what you said before, right? Like the nice thing about like this type of technology is that like it's good at like creating functions that human beings are not so great at. So like I dropped AI kind of for deterministic functions because like that's kind of where the math path was taking me. But like object detection in an image, it's really hard for like a software developer, a mathematician to kind of look at that data. Edge detection, like there was algorithms, they were moving pretty quickly, but like it's easier almost to train the AI to do it. You come up with results a little bit faster than you do mathematically. And at the same time, if it's 80, 90% correct, it matches a human being. So like at some point, like I was answering all the emails myself and I just used intent detection from Google. So they had a function already trained up and you give it some data and it was able to detect the difference between how do I cancel and could you cancel me? right? And it was able to send back the right email. Here's how you cancel. Could you cancel me? Okay, let's wait for an agent. The agent will hit the cancel button for you, right? That sort of thing. And like, yeah, I mean, if they're able to train it, if they're able to make it more accurate, then, you know, it frees up people's lives to do stuff that's more creative.
You can, focus on adding more value to the customer.
Exactly.
So I know you've also developed your scorekeeper software. How are you, have you integrated it into that, and how are you using it with that?
So like, I mean, what I consider it to be is a nice kind of rounding out of the product. So like the idea is that like the same bot that is running ChatGPT would be able to run your meetings, but it's more deterministically. So you give me the agenda, the bot runs the meeting for you. It'll drop out the agenda and etc. It maintains some sort of rules to the game. So like the ways you move tickets in your tracking systems like Trello, or the way like people are doing. So like keeping score was like kind of a big deal. Like it's in a lot of the different things that are out there, like EOS and scaling up. But like we were never able to get another human being to keep the score and have it be accurate. And that's a little bit weird because we had like VAs out of India, and but they set up the spreadsheet wrong. And now the next thing you know is you look at it and you say, well, can we trust the scores? Right. So if the computer's doing it and the computer's looking like it's accurate, everyone's willing to accept it. And so that's kind of what we've done. And then what we did was we said, you know what, like if you're already kind of talking to Bob, I call the bot Bob, like if you're already talking with Bob about like these things, maybe you want to go to Bob and be able to ask it a question like, oh yeah, hey, I'm having this problem over here with this software, or I'm having, I'd like to write an ad, or, you know, whatever, right? So it's a rounding out of the product, but the real product is the business management thing. And the end result is something that kind of feels like your Iron Man's Jarvis, if you will, right? And so like you're in there, you're talking with it. Hey, I'd like to create a to-do. It pops open a window. You start filling out the to-do. Now it's saved. You can reassign it on the next team meeting. It's going to show up on the team meeting. So like, oh, wow. Yeah. Hey, let's talk about this thing. I'd like to reassign it to you, or your next one-on-one. So like now it feels well-rounded, and it feels like it's going to help you out with your business.
So I'm still coming at this from a standpoint of, the superficial uses of these at the strategy level. So whatever marketing activities you're doing in your business, whether that's an SEO strategy, a Facebook ad strategy, a YouTube organic channel strategy. I mean, there's an unlimited number of strategies, right? And the thing is, so Angela is asking a question in the chat here about what are actual or specific strategies to use this technology in your marketing. And my thoughts on this are, one is you need to be clear that you're doing the right strategies in the first place. I think a lot of businesses pursue marketing strategies that aren't appropriate for their customers. A good example, like realtors on Snapchat. Like, yeah, your customer's on Snapchat, but why are you taking the time, money, and effort to build out a Snapchat channel or a Pinterest or whatever, when your customer's not going there to solve their problem? Does that make sense? And so I think to answer your question, Angela, is one, you need to be really clear on the strategies you're trying to execute on and what are the outcomes for it. And then you can figure out, how do we use these tools to get, much like we've been discussing, right? How do we use this to get the ball 60% down the field and basically pick up the efficiencies in it? Is that how you see it too?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of see it as like like you still need someone to come up with the strategy, but they could be using ChatGPT to test out the strategy, right? And
it's simply a tool at this point.
Yeah, and there's nothing to stop you too from like going to a human being and saying, okay, well, look, we have this thing performing at this level on this channel. Could you write something that beats it? Right. So like if you're testing out a strategy and ChatGPT is already giving you traction, well, now you know, like this is the direction we need to head in.
That's a great point on the iterative phases of marketing, like A/B testing and beating controls, right? That's where this, for me, gets really exciting in that you can take it's winning copy, right? For whether it's an ad or a landing page or whatever, it's a winner control copy. And you should be able to feed it into this tool. And now, based on a real winning control, come up with variants that you can start testing against. Like that's a real significant advantage in my mind. So it comes down to the training aspects of how can you train this tool to remember kind of where you're at. And as you're building your marketing strategies, you're not always starting from scratch.
Yeah. So
do you know how it does that, or can you do that?
Well, you can fine tune it. And the way that you would fine tune it is you give it a bunch of input and then the outputs that you'd like to see. And so that's a little bit different than the completion engine, but maybe it works. Like maybe they've tried this and it's helping people. There's another like thing, which is like you could feed it some text and you can tell it to edit it with some instructions. And I've integrated that into the system, into Slack, where I could say, okay, edit this text. And then I put the text in and then instructions : and then I feed it the instructions. So I'm able to feed it to the function and get the reply back. And so like, I haven't tried, like, for example, what you're saying, but theoretically speaking, yeah, you could say instructions. Hey, this is my winning copy. And I'd like to generate something else like this, but I'd like these changes. And we could see kind of what it outputs. And again, right, like, maybe it gives you a good idea and you're able to make it land.
Okay. I mean, there's this lure in the marketing world of, strategies and tactics. And there's kind of literally an unlimited number of strategies and tactics. And so I come from the school where just because it's there doesn't mean you should be doing it. And so that's where, I kind of wanted to explore this technology and think about it in terms of where is it going to change the industry 12 months, 24 months, 36 months down the road. Not so much. I mean, you can go to any Twitter feed or Google feed and, find a gazillion strategies for using this technology. The point is that just because it's there doesn't mean you should go do it.
Well, fair enough. Though, I mean, I was going to recommend the exact opposite.
Well, go ahead. That's the whole point, right? Is I'm here to learn.
I mean, I think the best strategy is that, like, if you're on the call now and they turned off the beta, like I would have shown it to you inside of the ChatGPT thing so that you weren't looking at like my development like bot, like just doing whatever. Mm-hmm. But they turned it off. And then they turned on for charge, which made sense to me. Is like, yeah, I assume you guys are going to make money off of this somehow sooner or later. So you might have to buy it now, but like whatever, right? $20, $40 a month. People were paying $1,300 a month for LexisNexis before Google came out and did it for free. I don't know if OpenAI was like completely against like, oh yeah, we're going to use your data for advertising. But like, yeah, Microsoft bought it and they integrated it into Bing because like, yeah, I mean, if I could ask it questions like, hey, how do I use this thing? Or how do I do that thing? And it's able to give me the answer faster than Google. Guess what? I might switch to Bing.
I was going to say, it wouldn't take 6 months for Bing to just lap Google with the proper integration if Google doesn't follow suit. Like, that's right. Like if Microsoft, it's amazing how quickly that would happen. If Microsoft's able to land it, how many people will go try it just to see? Yeah. Like
will this work for me? And that's ultimately what needs to happen, right? What needs to happen is like, if you went and started talking to this thing, you would start to see the limitations. You would start to see like the same way that you did with Google. You know what I mean? Like you put in a Google search and you're like, oh, okay, like I got to put in enough context for like the web pages, right? Like I got to put in the right keywords is the term they started using. But same thing with this thing. Like the way I say it is like, I got to give this thing enough context for it to answer my question. So I'm always just thinking about how can I get it more context? And like maybe I copy paste even what it gave me and said, hey, could you edit this and do something else with this? And so like the playing with it, right? That's where you're going to find the boundaries of like, what are the limitations and what's working, what's not working. But it's also how you're going to figure out how you are going to use it, right? And then ultimately that's kind of what's going to be
there's
different
so many,
from human being to human being.
There's so many, I've got a list that I'll send out, but there's so many already derivative applications of technology, using this technology. Like Tome, you can tell it to create a PowerPoint presentation, right? And it will go get the images and basically build your PowerPoint for you. There's also this idea of video, right? Where you can take and the idea of deep fake technology with video, where it's indistinguishable from real video, but it's completely fabricated, right? That's coming down the pipe too, I think.
From now. Yeah, I don't know if it's 36 months from now, but yeah, I mean, if that's what you're looking for, I bet you got fake influencers within 10 years. I bet you have companies that have stables of fake influencers with followers, and they're just selling product placement and random nonsense that ChatGPT generates on your behalf.
And I was thinking one opportunity I think that's going to be coming along is if this AI generated content becomes to the point where it's indistinguishable from real human generated content, you're going to have, I think there's an opportunity around, almost like Twitter has their little blue check mark, this is an authentic human being. You're going to start seeing things like, hey, this is a real life human being versus a computer generated version of it.
Yeah, that'd be a good way to solve this problem.
Like I'm kind of like, I want to kind of think through and pursue that as the authenticity kind of badge. Like, hey, I'm a real human, because it's coming, right? It's might be 4 or 5, 10 years down the road, but it's coming. Like it's undeniable that we're going to get to that point.
Someone's going to do it. I mean, no one's given me money to do it, but if you gave me $1 billion, I'd try to make that happen next year.
Yeah.
I'd deep fake myself, and I wouldn't have to be on anything. I'd just be at home. You'd be talking to me about ChatGPT, and I'd just be home in my sauna, sipping ice water or something.
Exactly. It makes me think of you have kids, right? That movie WALL-E.
Yeah.
Right. Where the robots do everything for the humans, and they just everyone's big and fat and just lays in these big couches and they don't do anything anymore. Like it feels like we're almost going to get to that point to a degree.
I think at the point where you're at fake influencers, people stop following random influencers. You know what I mean? But like, I don't know, human beings are always going to be interested in human beings. I mean, when you look at some of the things that are already out there, like this Twitch, I think it's called Twitch, where people are watching people play video games. Now they've modified Twitch so that you can watch people watch sports. So it's like the reaction to the sports is more entertaining to the sport to some of these children. You know what I mean? So like, I don't know, right? Like as we see kind of where the next generation starts to take like content consumption, I think what we see also changes, right? Like as TikTok takes over, like they're saying, oh, attention span goes down. So these kids can't watch movies. So now me watching movies with my kids is a good thing. You know what I mean? Like if they can sit through 2 hours, then they're already doing ahead of their peers. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like there's too many random variations that are happening. There's so many more people out there now than like 20, 30 years ago. And there's so many new different ideas and people doing different things that like maybe it finds a place. Maybe there's just a certain percentage of the population and they just love following this stuff. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like, I think real human interaction is what everyone's actually after. I mean, no one wants to be talking to a robot unless it's just getting the job done.
No. Yeah. And I mean, it's like all the little customer service chatbots, you know, that everyone uses now. How frustrating are those? That's just the modern version of the old school telephone prompts, right? Trying to navigate through all those. So it's the same thing over and over, right? We're inventing technology that's why I'm kind of wearing my devil's advocate hat today, because it's like, again, just because it's there and just because the tool exists, it's not necessarily an improvement on what you're doing. It is literally just a tool to help either do it faster, more ideas. It's a co-conspirator.
Yeah, I mean,
whatever
that's what
you're
I'm saying.
doing.
It's a calculator, right? Like, just because I can punch the numbers in and get the answer faster doesn't change like the reason why I was punching in the numbers. That's the entire point, right? Like, that's what we tell people about the mathematics. It's useless to you unless you can actually apply it. Unless I look at a real life problem and then say, yeah, you know what, I need a calculator for this problem, then it's not useful, right? So like, yeah, we teach kids to multiply, but we got to teach them what it means too.
Right. So, all right, there's another question in here. You mentioned about how you're using it integrated with your Trello. And the question is basically, how do you use it to move cards in Trello? Is that a function you're doing?
So what it is that we're doing with Trello is we're keeping score. So like in your typical Kanban format, you got the columns and they move from left to right. And like typically you're moving it left to right and you're trying to get to the end. And so basically what we said was like, when you get to the end, that's a score for the team and everyone that moves it along gets a point. And so we've built a game, but that's your scorecard. That's your KPIs for your business, because like you care about how much production are we getting moving the tickets from left to right. And so like by automating this and by allowing you to kind of generate the events that are important to you and track them, we're able to automate the scorecard function. So like it used to be that we had to have someone who counted the cards that moved across, or like there was some Trello integrations that could help them, and et cetera. But like if we just fully automate it and just count them, now we can give each player some sort of a true score. And like we can tell, like, you know, kind of what's going on in the business. That dashboard that like EOS and Scaling Up describe, where it's like, if I just look at that dashboard, I know how my business is doing. So it's for the manager, it's for the upper people, but it also makes possible this gamification of business, which is really what the product's about. The product's about switching the relationship from management to coaching, right? Like, hey, look, we want to help you put up the points. And, you know, like one easy way to do that is to make the bonus based on the points. So like if you make the bonus based on the points, now I'm coaching you to get a bigger bonus. And so now I'm coaching you to get better productivity. Yeah. So like everybody's winning.
But then again,
what I like to do. I like to build the game.
The Kanban tickets, right?
No. The humans are moving the
Kanban the human has to do that.
They're done with the work.
Yeah. So, okay. I mean, I wanted to explore more along the lines of not, you know, hey, go generate a blog post, translate it, you know, into German and then bring it back and put it in Grammarly. And then you flush out a decent piece that's not, you know, totally plagiarized. It's like, that's out there. Again, I didn't want to get into the tactics of using this tool. I wanted to have a conversation around the opportunities for the strategies of this. And I think the real opportunities here are in training the tool with proven real data sets. And then we can use that as the leverage to move it into a production of meaningful content and value for your customers. Right. So, yeah, go ahead.
Well, so like, I mean, again, you can try to train the tool, and like you might be able to get it to do what you're doing. And at the same time, I think the bigger picture is like, this product is the product. You know what I mean? Like the thing that you're looking at is the product, and maybe there's ways to kind of mold the product. But like when people are looking at it, like when I see like the EO past and present channel, for example, and they're asking like, but what is the business opportunity here? Well, the business opportunity here is that like you can build something bigger on top of it, right? Like you can find the functions that you need out there and maybe build something on top of it. Or if that thing doesn't exist, maybe you're training the function to do it. But like, if you start doing that, you can start to build tools now that didn't exist previously. And like, this thing is sort of like the proof of concept. I think that's why it's such a big deal. It's like, like, look at this. This is better than anything we've ever seen before, because like of what you said, like they've had AI doing these chatbots on these company websites. So like, yeah, if I trained it on my knowledge base and I started asking it questions about my company, would it give me like human sounding answers for like, and if it did that, that would be absolutely amazing, right?
Yeah.
But then that's the end of the story here, because that's what it is. This is just a chatbot, maybe an image generation tool. And then after that, that's kind of it. And like, even if it was a chatbot, I'd have to keep feeding it the entire chat until I reach the limit. And then I'm hoping that whatever context is left is enough for it to keep going. But theoretically, people have used it this way. Like if you're reading the news articles and you're seeing like someone used ChatGPT to get a refund from their credit card or dispute a credit card charge, and like it was able to do the whole thing. But that's pretty amazing. I mean, like if it did that successfully, then it's already fooling human beings into thinking it's a person. It's just, how are they doing it? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And there's some interesting things too. Like, have you heard of, there's that thread on Reddit around, they've taken the chat because it has built-in limitations, right? Like you can't have it create racist content, things like that, right? And so they've already figured out a way around that with the Dan. Have you heard of that?
No, what's that about?
I don't know the specifics of it, but basically they told it to behave as something that isn't limited. And what would that thing write? And so they're already building extrapolation on extrapolation and iteration, and it's already becoming mind-boggling. And like you said, this technology just hit the world this year, right?
I mean, while you were holding up that book, that's exactly what I was thinking, was like, if you went to ChatGPT right now and said, could you write a sales letter that looks like this guy's sales letter? Could it do it? It might be able to. But even then, like, and this is just my opinion, like, I mean, you probably know better, but like, I don't know if it would work, to be honest with you, because like a sales letter from 1990 is not going to sell someone in 2022. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not saying this guy's from 1990, but like, that's the challenge, is that the marketing, the sales, everything kind of evolves over time. And it might get to a point where it wraps around, kind of like culture, like, oh yeah, like the 60s stuff is cool again. It might work. I don't know, right? Like, that's the whole thing, is like, you're dealing with like another variable in the story, right? Like the ChatGPT is generating what it generates now, but the other variable is, what is the human being responding to?
Right. That's exactly it. And you would not only need it to train on like writing in, say, this guy's style, but I do see tremendous applications around, again, it's that Venn diagram. If we were to have a data set of all of our sales calls, like our winning sales calls and those transcripts, and then we have a framework for a modern sales letter, can we combine those two and now produce something that's genuinely super valuable, right? And super efficient, or just works, right? Like, it's, again, theoretically, you're going to be able to create a piece of content that no human could create, because you can't hold that data set, 100 sales calls in your mind. And I don't know, you know, it's, can we take frameworks and structures and train it to write in those structures?
Look, they call it data science, but like the thing is that like really what it is experimentation. You know what I mean? Like, and the thing is that like what you're saying could happen, right? Like the thing is that you might have to just kind of build it. You know what I mean? And like again, it's pasting together different functions. This idea of being able to go through the sales calls. Like I think you could theoretically feed it to ChatGPT's fine tuning and see what happens and like see what it spits out then when you start to query it, you know what I mean? But you'd have to build a system that's triggering that particular function. And then like for what you're saying, like you want to see like in the winning sales calls, like, you know, like what was in common, right? Like what was the things, or like what were the problems? What were the common problems, right? This is kind of a different function. Like this is sucking in all of that text and then kind of grouping it by classification. It's a classification problem. And there's classification AI tools out there, right? Like that maybe like if you trained at high dimension, all of a sudden would be like revolutionary. But I think they already kind of work, you know what I mean? Like, so that's the whole thing is that like, the things that you're saying, they're already viable. It's just someone's got to sit down and paste it all together and then see, can they trigger it to make it work? Because again, you're kind of pasting together systems that maybe weren't exactly designed to do what you wanted to do. And if you didn't get it to work, maybe you could train a function to do exactly what you wanted to do if you got one of the other things to give you useful information. Either way, I mean, what you're truly saying is that like if you got a data analyst tomorrow, because for your business, you only need to do this once. You don't need AI to do it over and over and over again. If you just analyze all the working sales calls and all the not working sales calls, I bet you'd come up with a whole bunch of do's and a whole bunch of don'ts, and then you'd be able to feed that back to your sales team and get results tomorrow if you wanted to.
Yeah. And that's what we do, right? Is you want to look at that data, and it is a categorization piece. And you know, and again, in my more direct marketing world versus just branding and content for content's sake, is we always want to have that loop closed with metrics, right? Like, did this thing perform to a certain baseline number? And then our job is to get better and better at that. And that's kind of, for me, I'm thinking, yeah, there's opportunities on making our day-to-day tasks more efficient or better with this current state of the tools. But I really wanted to explore like the next thinking of, okay, how do we really take advantage of this and build an asset for the company, or really the next level of not just the surface, hey, I can kick out a bunch of content with this stuff, but how can I use it to really build an asset in the company, kind of like that translation database?
Well, so the challenge about what you're saying is that like, theoretically speaking, if you were able to do that, then someone else would be able to do that too, right? So that's where the easy button kind of kills itself. You know what I mean? Like if everyone got the easy button, then everyone can build it. So then the value sort of diminishes, right? Like when people are searching to purchase companies, they want something that's unique. They want something that's working.
There's a value driver.
Exactly. And so like, I think the real opportunity here is to somehow get in onto this AI arms race that's sort of quote unquote kicked off, right? Like the VCs are now pouring money back into this because, you know, when a company like Microsoft spends $7.5 billion for something, that's like, oh, wow. So like if I dropped $100 million into this, Google might buy me for $7.5 billion. So like, yeah, look, if that's possible, then let's go gamble, right? Let's go back to the tables.
Even if the interest rates are high. My line of thinking is like, there's a huge opportunity here for a whole new world. That's not just, okay, this is a tool to help us make, you know, different content or more content.
The winners are going to be tool creators, right? Like the people who are able to look at the problems and craft the tools And I mean, the people who use the tools are also going to benefit from it, obviously. But like if you're looking into the future and you're trying to find a crystal ball of what's like that magic thing, that's going to be harder, right? Because like someone's going to have to identify, how do I solve the problem? The thing that you're saying out loud, right? I built that. That's totally, it's totally viable, because like if you built it and then you're able to get valuable insights for your business, then you're going to be able to sell that to someone else because you got valuable insights. And so like, you know, it's just a question of how long does it take to build the tools. And that's the nice thing, is that like, as the tools get more advanced, the time to creation is smaller. So you can actually see, is this useful for me, and then correct. And ultimately that's the whole job of tool creation.
We're approaching an hour and a half, but I have one last question I want to ask you. So an integral part of, and we did this for your business, right? Where we did the customer survey, and where you take your feedback from the customers, which is very subjective information. And we have a manual human being process of reading through and categorizing all that data and finding your 80-20, right? I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you should be able to feed in that spreadsheet to even the existing technology today and say, all right, go find me the 3 big bucket problems that all these people are experiencing. And it will do it like that, right?
So yeah, like in the documents, I have seen stuff like that. I haven't tried it because it's a very interesting thing, but like the number of words that I'm able to send it is limited. And I don't know if like, that's the whole thing. So like at some point, and that's what I keep saying about the context, right? Like I keep moving it down, because it's like, if I started having a conversation with the bot, then I could copy paste the entire conversation and send it back. So like in a code standpoint, I would do it, right? Like, oh, okay, yeah, like we'll just keep extending the conversation. But then at some point I'm going to hit that limit, and then the window starts sliding down. So the bot stops seeing the beginning of the conversation. So it's not able. So that's really the question, is one, could I get that entire spreadsheet into there? I'm not sure. Would it do it? I think so. That's the weird thing. So like you could tell it, can you do sentiment analysis on these tweets, and then feed it some tweets, and it would do it. And it shows an example with 5 or 10 tweets, but it doesn't show an example with 1,000 tweets, right? And
right.
That's probably because it can't do it. So like, that's what I'm saying, is like, but there's these other tools out there already, right? Like if you go look for it, right? And again, it's about determining how the engineer is naming the problem. Like you just gave me the marketing term for classification, it's categorization. But like, yeah, for some reason in data science, they call it classification. So if I search classification, neural networks or AI or whatever, you'll start to see like GitHub results show up. GitHub results are like what coders are going to look at to see like, oh yeah, could I easily start to just clone someone else's repository and start to do this? And like, this stuff is out there because like a lot of it's just open source. To be honest with you, ChatGPT was open source until Microsoft closed it off here. So like, maybe there'll be a taking down of this thing, but like, while it's open, it's not a horrible idea to try to go solve these problems.
Yeah, no, and that's like really a valuable tool for a company to keep this ongoing database of customer feedback, and you can use it in so many applications, not just marketing, but like product development and opportunity development, and where you're getting real human feedback and then using these tools to further grow your business is kind of the next level thinking that I'm looking at, versus again, just as a writing tool. But anyway, so we're at an hour and a half. Do you have any last thoughts, comments, questions, or anything you want to share, or warnings?
Thank you for having me. I mean, just kind of watch out, right? Like if you're not sure if the answer looks correct, go look it up.
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, look, I think that like, you got to go play with it, because like that was the way that you learned how to use Google. You went and played with it, and then like you're able to start getting some meaningful stuff out of it for you. And that's kind of ultimately like with any new technology, with any new tool, you got to start to integrate it into your arsenal.
Yeah.
It's not like a situation where I found where it's like, oh no, I just cannot use that tool. It's always been, what's the right tool for the job that the goal that I'm trying to accomplish now. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah. Right. When you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Right.
So, all right. Well, thank you for taking your time out today. And I can't wait to see how you've integrated this in Scorekeeper. Maybe we'll do another session and you can show us the Scorekeeper app. Because that too is, that's a business management level where you're using this technology to help with the management and growth of the business. But that's a different conversation. So again, thank you for your time. Hope people got some ideas out of this and some value, a deeper understanding of what this tool is and isn't, and how we can use it to better our businesses and basically serve our customers better, right? So,
yeah.
All right. I'm going to end, and thank you very much, and we will connect again.